All right. I travel around a lot, and it seems like whenever I go to a long-term athletic development, or now what we call American Development Model session, or to these national clinics for the PE teacher conventions and other things, I'm always with these two other guys, and we're always never in Colorado Springs or Denver, and we're always having to fly to talk to each other. So they've had a chance for me to come bug them at their swimming conferences and bug them at their hockey conferences. Last May we had a really neat session with a lot of NHL at the 15 to 16-year-old levels of clubs, and a 2-day session just for that age group for hockey. Now they're paying back and giving us ideas on how we can grow our sport successfully by what they are doing in two great NGBs that are about our size. Hockey's a little bit larger than we are now. They're shot up to around 550, 600,000 members. And the retention is a big part of it because we're losing 75,000 coaches and athletes and members each year. As when you see the number we have, we're still seeing a lot of churn at the younger age group especially. So hopefully they can address some of these ideas. First one's going to be Tom, who's mic'd up, so I'm going to be quietening on this thing. Tom Avischious from USA Swimming.
Thank you. So let me tell you this is a little bit about myself. I'm a recovering coach. I've been recovering for 20-some years at USA Swimming. When John asked me to talk, one of the things that I kind of was thinking about, okay, so what does USA Swimming and volleyball have in common? So I was thinking, okay, the technical gear that the athletes wear. So this is what your women are wearing at the Olympic team. Here's what our women were wearing. So, kind of similar. Then the men. I want you to go next slide. I may have to just have you do it manually since it doesn't seem to be. Do you have any more slots open? Okay. Except it's not pointing. Okay. Just go ahead and hit the next button then if you're next slide. Yep. All right, so here's what your men wear. Here's what our guys wear, not at all similar. And not to make sure that Ken's still involved here, not at all like what hockey wears. So what are things that are in common? And I'm in my 20th year at USA Swimming, and in 2001, we did a governance study of our sport. And one of the things that we found is that in swimming, the study said that we were the biggest underserved group in our governance was clubs. And the more I'm involved in, actually Ken and I were talking about this on the way up here, the more I interact with John and Ken and some other of our counterparts around the country and other national governing bodies, the sport that is played is different, but a lot of the things that happen at the club level are exactly the same issues. It's parents, coaches, those kind of issues. So one of the things that I wanted to kind of present to you today is we had developed a course a number of years ago called the Club Leadership and Business Management School to teach swim clubs how to run more like effective business units. And so some of the things that I'm going to show you are going to be some basic principles and concepts from that course, and hopefully you'll be able to apply them in your own area. So we're going to try the clickers, and basically what this is, it's a voting device. So pull out your little clicker and turn it, the bottom button says on. You should see a little green light that shows up. And what will happen is you'll vote A, B, or C, and you'll see theoretically a countdown timer, but I have a feeling this may not work. But nope. It's counting, but they can't see it. So anyway, you can vote. You can vote A, B, C, or D.
4 of you have voted. 6 of you have voted.
Make sure you turn on. Make sure that you see your light come on. Okay, if the light's blue. Okay, if it turns off the power when you push it, let me get you a different one. That means your battery's bad. Okay. We really didn't want your vote. So what?
Done.
All right. So basically, yeah. What are the votes here, John?
5C, 4B, 2A.
Okay. So basically, most of you kind of said that you really weren't necessarily prepared to be your club director. One of the things that I found when I was looking at this and working on this, I came across a paper that we had written 10 years ago about issues that swim clubs were facing because we had a lot of turnover and some head coaching positions 10 years ago. And what I want to do is show you, next slide. Okay. There you go. So what I'd like you to do is just kind of read through some of these comments that we took and see if any of them are similar to things that you're dealing with. So are these things that probably things you're also dealing with? Okay, go to the next one, please. Again, another set. Again, same things. It seem to be issues that you are probably dealing with. Okay. I just want to make sure that we're good.
When you say employees, when you say employees, are you seeing that most of your club are volunteers getting 1099s? Or are they independent contractors, in other words, or are they actually employees at the club level for swimming?
In swimming, it's kind of, the answer is yes. In that we don't have many volunteer coaches. Most coaches in USA swimming clubs are paid somehow by an organization. So it's not a lot of volunteers. And most of them are either on a salary or an hourly basis.
Can you tell the group, because I think it's fascinating, about how much your officials get paid for the average local swim meet until they get up to national level?
Nothing. Our officials don't get paid at all. And even at the national level, the only officials, they actually don't get paid, they get reimbursed for if you're like a meet director or a head administrative referee at one of our national championships, you will get your way paid. But most of the officials that are on deck at our national championships travel there on their own dime. So, and it always amazes me because we have something like 30 or 40 officials at a big national championship meet that they travel there on their own. So I got up to work. Whoops, wait a minute, go back. So this is going to be another voting question. And
Counting down.
it's counting down. Who owns your team? Again, make sure it's on. Nonprofit. Are you an institutionally owned or are you a coach-owned program? How many numbers are we getting here now?
14, 15 votes.
Okay.
10 seconds left.
Okay. So.
16 votes. Some people are calling their boss funny.
Okay. Okay. What's it show as the answers? Great.
But it was, most of them were A.
Okay.
I saw that
Before it switched.
There it is. 9A.
What?
2B,
Yes.
5C.
Okay, what was it?
9A, 2B, 5C.
Okay.
9A, 2B, 4C.
Okay. All right, next slide. So just to give you an idea of how USA Swimming is organized, about half of our clubs are board-governed 501c3 organizations. About a third of them are what we call institutionally owned, meaning that they're owned by some other organization, generally a school or a park and rec district or a YMCA. And all of those generally are 501c organizations as well. And then a little bit less than 15% are coach-owned for us. So let's just do this with a show of hands. When I say club or team, I kind of am going to use that term interchangeably. So basically it means how large is your program. So is your total, those of you that your total program is under 100, how many would do that? A, okay. How many would say between 101 to 150? Between 151 to 200? 201 to 250? Anyone over 250? Okay. So overview of USA Swimming Clubs. Basically what this is saying is that we have about 2,800 swim clubs total in the US that are members of USA Swimming. Predominantly we have approximately 1,700 clubs that are less than 100 swimmers. 446 between 101 to 150, 282, and then we have, you can see on the bottom. The interesting thing about this is that even though the predominant number of clubs is less than 100, that actually represents less than a quarter of our total membership. And the interesting thing also that we've seen over the last 10 years or so, that number has not changed very much. Where we have seen our growth, because we've had about a 40-some% increase in our membership in the last 10 years, has predominantly come in clubs that have members of 200 or more swimmers. So our 200 or more swimmers represents the largest number of athletes in USA Swimming. We are comprised of, we have about 337,000 athlete members, a little less than 2,900 clubs. We have 59 what we call local swim committees. That's kind of a result of the old AAU days when we were formed, because we have some states that have large population centers. So generally it's kind of by state border. So for swimming there is Colorado Swimming, but in Texas there are 4 different local swim committees. I think it would be similar to your, what do you call it, regional volleyball association, something. That would be our local swim committees, what that is for us. This is just to show you kind of, I'm not looking for you to see the actual numbers, but this is the membership, total members that we have in the sport. So in a 10-year period, we've kind of seen a gradual increase. We always see a pretty good bump after the Olympic year. And in 2013, we had a 13% increase, which is the biggest increase we ever had after an Olympic year. The green line represents the percentage of our swimmers that are 13 or 12 and under, and the red line indicates the percentage of swimmers that are 13 and over. So we're about a little less than 60% 12 and unders, and then 40-some percent 13 and overs. The other interesting thing, just again, I don't know what your figures are, but these are our retention figures. Our overall retention rate runs around 70%. So 7 out of 10 swimmers come back from year to year. What I find really interesting is the retention rate of our 13 and overs is almost 90%. So basically, if they're in the swim team as a 13-year-old, they're going to come back. So we see the churn in the 12 and unders, and it's 60%, which some people think is really bad, but as far as I can tell, and from what I've heard from other sport organizations, that's a pretty good retention rate for younger kids. And just to give you an idea, some context also, to belong to USA Swimming, an athlete, coach, or an official pays $52 a year, and there's a local fee that generally is charged on top of that, so it's generally somewhere in the $60 to $70 range that an athlete or a coach is paying. And the team also pays a fee to USA Swimming, which again, the local swim committee can tack a fee on top of that. Now, those are the fees to be a member of USA Swimming. Virtually all clubs charge a training fee on top of that, but this is just to be a member of USA Swimming.
How much of that 52 a year, how much of that 52 a year goes to the national office?
All of it.
Okay.
The entire 52 goes to USA Swimming. If a local swim committee wants to charge a fee, they can keep that fee over and above what the 52 that goes to USA Swimming. And we're also on a graduated scale where every year that fee goes up to $2. So I think the max, we're in the second year of an increase, so I think the highest it will go is $70 in like 9 years from now. So now I want to start talking about some just general governance things. And at least in swimming, the only time bylaws ever get looked at is when a board or a club wants to fire the head coach. And it's like, we got to get the bylaws to find out what the bylaws say and how to fire the head coach. So, but the bylaws should say more than that. They're the governing document as to how that organization is supposed to operate. Most bylaws are changed by, they're set up so that they're hard to change. So they're kind of the general operating guidelines and principles of the organization, and you don't want to be changing them a lot. So they also should be posted so that people can see what's in the bylaws. Looks like we're stuck again. The next thing I want to talk about is policies. And policies generally are set by either a board or by the coaching staff or the club administrator. Policies generally are a lot more flexible in terms of how you can change them because they generally require just a vote of the board of directors. If you're a board or if you're a coach, you can set policies. Now, one of the things that we have in swimming that will say is there are wet side policies and dry side policies. And wet side, basically what we would mean by that is anything that has to do with pertaining to swimming and swimming performance should be set by the head coach. Anything on the dry side kind of can be open for negotiation between the board of directors and the head coach. But one of the things that we really feel is important, that if you have a wet side policy, meaning it's something under the coach's purview, you want to make sure that that is communicated to everyone on the team, and especially to the board of directors, because what happens is you don't want to be surprised by a policy that the coach made but that no one knows. And so an example of a policy that would be definitely under the purview of the head coach would be, it's not unusual for a team to have a policy that says that if you want to participate in this junior national championship, you have to have a 90% practice attendance. And otherwise, we're not going to take you on the trip. That is not at all uncommon in swimming. But I can guarantee you that if that policy is not communicated and someone, the coach tells the swimmer, you're not going to national, we're not taking you to nationals because you had 82% practice attendance, it's usually not the head coach that hears about it first. It's usually somebody on the board of directors that goes, I pay all my money just like everyone else. How come I can't go? The correct response should be, that's a coaching policy. We support our coach. We're going to go with that. That's why, we have that policy. You'll have to take it up with the coach. And these are just some different examples of policies that you may want to consider having on your team. Next thing that we think is really important is that we find too many clubs that operate kind of in the fire drill mode. And so we suggest that you have an annual schedule when you go over things. Now, obviously, if you're a coach-owned program, you're not going to do a head coach evaluation, although we would suggest that you take out a time to do a self-evaluation. So that would be a good thing to do. And maybe you don't have a board of directors, but you may have a volunteer plan or something like that. So again, just some things that you just need to put on your calendar so that you make sure that they get reviewed on an annual basis, so that you're at least taking a look at your bylaws once a year instead of not only when you're trying to fire the head coach. All right. Let's talk about mission. How many of you can state, let's do this. Everyone stand up. Get you, stand up. When you can't do this, I want you to sit down. You can state your mission statement word for word. You can state the general idea of it. You've read it, but you really don't know what it says. Yeah, I should have started at the bottom. All right, let's everyone stand up. Let's do this again. Sorry. This is where the clickers would have, if the clickers are working right, it would be a lot easier to do. E, we have a mission statement. Okay, D, I know we have one, but I've never read it. I've read it, but I don't really know what it says. I can state the general idea, and I can state your mission statement word for word. Okay, awesome. Thank you very much. Okay, John, I'm going to need you because we're going to do okay. I'm going to hopefully play you a little video on developing a mission statement.
I want to show you why most mission statements are so terrible. So let's say that you own a chain of pizza parlors And maybe you have a mission statement that you've drafted and it says something like, our mission is to serve the tastiest damn pizza in Wake County. Now that's pretty good if you ask me. If I was one of your employees, I could get excited about that. But here's where things go off the rails. So you invite all your colleagues to come join you and to help you wordsmith this thing. And you all sit around a table and right in front of your eyes, a transformation happens. All of these people who you like and respect suddenly become 10th grade English teachers and begin to nitpick every word of this thing.
Hey, I really like the word present better than serve. It has a nice resonance.
We obviously can't say damn. And why limit ourselves to Wake County?
And guys, I know our pizza is good, but what about the calzones and the salads? Why don't we just say highest quality Italian food?
Our Greek salad isn't Italian.
We haven't even talked about the atmosphere yet, the big comfy booths and the kids' birthday parties and all that.
Yeah, great point. You know what we're really doing here? We're providing a family entertainment solution.
Yeah, solution.
Nailed it.
And everyone's excited now. You're almost there. And then Steve at the end of the table pipes up.
Listen, guys, we haven't mentioned anything about integrity. That's what it's all about. At the end of the day, integrity.
And is anyone at the table going to rise up and go to the mat against the word integrity being in the mission statement? Doubtful. So presto, that's in. And now here's your new and improved mission statement. Our mission is to present with integrity the highest quality entertainment solutions to families. I know this is a little bit silly, but you got to admit, this is what 99% of mission statements sound like. And now you know why. There's this cycle of making words more ambiguous and more fancy until all of the meaning, leaches out. Here's how to avoid that. 2 tips. Number 1, use concrete language. Great example comes from this fast-growing small business called Sonic Bids. Check this out. We want to help musicians get gigs and promoters book the right bands. We're a bunch of people who think that music can truly change the world and make it smaller and better. Now, I love that. I think it gives you a picture of exactly what they do and also gives you a hint why they might want to do that. And that brings us to the second point, which is talk about the why. Most mission statements are really long on statement and really short on mission. And the whole point of this is to talk about why you're doing what you do. You've got to talk about what makes you care. So let me give you a famous example from Johnson & Johnson. This is the first line in their credo. Our first responsibility is to the doctors, nurses, and patients, mothers and fathers, and all others who use our products and services. Well, all right. That's something that you could get out of bed to go do. Now contrast that with the guiding principles of ExxonMobil. Did you feel that? A little part of your soul just died reading that mission statement. So now you've seen why bad mission statements happen to good people, and I've given you 2 tips for avoiding that fate. If you're interested in learning more about writing a great mission statement, go to fastcompany.com/Heath. And in the meantime, I want to challenge you to do the impossible, to create a mission statement that says something. And one final hint, if it includes the word solution in it, you're not there yet. Thanks for watching.
Okay, so go to the next slide. So one of the things that there's kind of a trend now is to have shorter and more compelling mission statements. There's been some studies done that mission statements should be no longer than 17 words. So I don't know whether that means if you have a 25-word mission statement, it's not good, but generally, when you think about it, that's probably 1 or 2 sentences at most. And I think the big thing is, can you put it on the back of a t-shirt? Not one of those ones where it's got, 500 names of athletes that are participating in a tournament, but can you really read it, and does it make sense to you, and does it define who you are and what you're trying to do? So now what I'd like you to do is, just on a piece of paper or in one of the handouts that you have, I'd like you to take a couple minutes and write a newspaper headline for your team or your program 10 to 20 years from now. Now that assumes that newspapers are still going to be around 10 to 20 years from now, but assuming they are, what would you like the newspaper headline to say about your program? Okay, when you're done, if you kind of look up so I know how much more time, okay. Anyone, I'm going to ask for a volunteer or two. Would anyone care to share what they wrote down? Okay.
Volleyball club bringing opportunity to Western Kansas.
Okay. Anyone else care to share?
YOSA, Youth Sports Academy, has its Nets of Hope program serving children in 5 continents.
Okay.
Rise builds character.
Okay. Anyone else? All right. One of the things that's interesting is basically what you just did is kind of your vision statement. It's what do you ultimately want to accomplish is what a vision statement is. The mission is more why you do, what you're trying to accomplish, but vision is more how will we know when we've gotten there. And one of the things where if I told you write down a vision statement, my guess is we'd still probably all be here and you'd be really struggling with it. So this is kind of a pretty quick exercise to write a newspaper headline 10 to 20 years from now. And basically what you want to do once you have your vision is, what do we ultimately want to accomplish? You need to then work backwards from that is, do we have the things in place that we want to, that's going to get us to where we ultimately want to go. So you can work backwards from the vision. That's going to be your ultimate kind of goal, but then do you have the things in place? All right, next state. You must be. There we go. One of the things that we highly suggest is that head coaches write a monthly report. And a lot of coaches, when they hear this for the first time, they kind of roll their eyes and go, you got to be kidding me. Why do I have to do this? And I will tell you from personal experience, I had a problem with the board of directors and because I worked in a board program and talked with a guy at the American Swimming Coaches Association. He said, do you write a monthly report? And I said, no. And he goes, well, you should. And because it gives me a chance to let my employer know what I do on a daily basis. So I started doing that and it made my life be a lot easier. So here are some things that I think a monthly report should include. I guess we're stuck again. All right. So for one of the things I would suggest that you include is, however you have your groups structured and your team, you have it like separate 9 and 10, 11, 12s. In swimming, these are what we would call typical age groups. You're broken down by boys and girls, and then comparing your current year or current month to previous month and also to last year. So make sure that you're spotting if there are any trends or any issues going on that you can see kind of quickly. Next. And we have time standards, but again, what I would suggest here, it would be what are you using to measure success characteristics in some of your different training groups, and can you quantify those things? Do you have any kind of report that you talk about, we went to this match or this tournament, here's how we placed? Then the next slide would be, we're going to some upcoming meets and what I was looking for at those meets. So for example, we always used to take a travel trip at the end of January where I was going and we took the team on a bus trip and we were looking more for how were they competing in an environment and against people that they weren't used to normally racing. I wasn't necessarily looking for best times, but it was just a different experience in how did they handle traveling when mommy and daddy weren't with them. So I could get that out ahead of time and let people know up front these were the expectations of that meet. And then if I had any, special projects that I was working on, I could report on those different projects, any things in terms of staffing that was going on. And then this is kind of a way of like David Letterman's top 10 list. Here are the things that I'm working on this coming month. Here are the things that I said I was going to do this past month. Did I do them or did I not do them? And hopefully if I didn't do them, they got added to my list of things that I was going to continue to work on in the upcoming month. I found when I did this, it made my life be a whole lot easier because I was telling people up front, here's what I'm working on, here's what's going on. And I would suggest even if you're working in you're a coach-owned program, this is just kind of a good way for you to do a monthly check, and you can also share this with your coaching staff about here's some of the things that we're working on. I would also highly recommend if you're working in an institutional program where you have to report to somebody in the school system or in the Y, and again, it gives whoever your supervisor is a good idea of what it is that you're doing. Head coach has a very multifaceted role. So one of the things that we have, if you look on page 18 in the handouts, and I know I'm kind of flipping all around in the handout packet, these are some roles and responsibilities that a swim coach has, and I'm not really so sure that anything in there is not totally appropriate for a volleyball coach to do. So again, just may use that as kind of an example. What I'd like you is take a quick look through that list, and if there's anything that kind of surprises you that might be in there. So I'll give you a minute to read over those, and is there anything that kind of stands out to you that, well, I didn't know that, or maybe that's a good idea that we don't do. Anyone have anything in there that they see that's kind of interesting or thought-provoking to them or kind of hit them? Yep. Yeah, I mean, yes and no. If your head coach or coach is administratively challenged, I would not give them checkbook writing capabilities. But if the head coach is, in swimming that they do entry fees into swim meets, so that may be where the coach would write the check or has a company credit card. But there definitely needs to be checks and balances involved with that, and someone needs to be on top of kind of doing a monthly audit about the expenses. But it definitely should be within the budget kind of scenario. Yep. Hold on just a second. We've got to. Yeah.
I'm impressed that I don't see here as much as a instruction being in charge of the technical development of the athletes.
Yeah, that actually is.
Is that implied or?
Yeah, that's implied.
Implied, but it's not explicit.
That is correct.
So for how many hours a day typically the club practice?
For swim teams on a senior, what I would call high school age, generally most clubs are going an hour to an hour and a half in a morning practice, and generally 2 to 2.5 hours in an afternoon practice.
So the practice
So
like 4 hours?
Approximately 3 to 4 hours a day is pretty common.
And that's 4 hours of deliberate practice, and that would include planning.
That is that's on deck
Yeah.
in the water time or
Yeah.
dry land. That does not include any planning time.
So the role of instruction, although implicit, would be very important.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
What do you mean in the list, direct parent education program?
I think and I think we feel it's really important that a club have and there are different philosophies on this. I know of one very large team, they specifically say we are not educating our parents at all. So they literally do no parent education. It's a coach-owned program. It's a very large team, and the coach basically doesn't believe in parent education. Personally, that I could not operate that way. It's just not a philosophy I would have. We recommend that a coach at least oversees that parent education is happening. It doesn't have to be done by the head coach, but that somebody needs to be doing some parent education.
And I'll add that I think it was at tennis with these guys that they stopped using the word parent education.
Right.
And changed it to parent information and found a lot better.
Right. Parents don't want to be educated. They want to be informed.
They want to be informed. And so that subtle change really helped the connection between the clubs that want to teach and help a parent versus, even though it is education.
Yep.
So when you're talking about education or information, is it giving the parents information or education about specific skills that their children are learning? Is it just information or education about the overall vision of the club and how it's going to operate?
Honestly, I think it's like all of the above.
Okay.
I mean, I think it needs to be comprehensive. You may have, we encourage a lot of clubs to have some kind of team manual or parents handbook, and a lot of times that's posted on a team's website. But again, that just because you post it doesn't mean that they read it. So, you may need to set up informational meetings along the way to do that. And one of the things that we found that's kind of interesting, at least in swimming, there is, when you go to a swim meet, there's a warm-up time before the actual competition starts. I've heard of some clubs that have taken advantage of that, where they may have the assistant coach run the warm-up while the head coach goes up in the stands, because parents are all there, and they'll do an informational meeting during warm-up. So I honestly don't know how, a volleyball tournament is organized, but I didn't know if there's some times, before a match begins where they're warming up, that you could do some information stuff because the people are all there. So it may or may not work, but I know that some clubs have found that to be a really good way to do it. So the other one on there that I want to bring up is the idea of maintaining office hours. It's not so much that because you may or may not have an office, but basically the concept is, how does someone contact you? And also, how does someone contact your assistant coaches? Do you have any policies in place that if someone contacts one of the other coaches, are they required to respond to them within 24 hours? And especially in instant communication that we live in, what's realistic? And, are there certain times that you are available for phone calls? You prefer that people contact you via email? Just how do people get in touch with you? And that's kind of what I mean by office hours there. All right. All right, let's go to that one. One of the things that I think it's important that you figure out is how are you going to measure your success? And does your club do evidence-based decision-making or decision-based evidence-making? In other words, you're making stuff up to support what's happening. And I have to say that I stole this line from Peter Vint, that used to work for the USOC, because I thought it was tremendous. Because I find way too many people do the right-hand side instead of the left-hand side. Figure out what it is you want to accomplish and how are you going to measure that you're getting there or not. So what I'd like you to do, or when we talk about success, what I'd like you to do is I think I handed out the wheel of success to you. And we're going to do a little exercise. And here's what the exercise is. I'd like you to come up with 8 different characteristics that you think make up what you would like to see be a successful club for your own program. If you came with somebody else from your team, do this together. And you kind of talk about it. And what I would like you to do is write each characteristic on the line as we go around the wheel. And this is where the anal retentive part of me comes out. Write it on the line. There is a reason for that, okay? Because I know, like, if I told this to Mr. Kessel, he'd be writing it sideways and in different colors and that kind of stuff, because we did this one time. And he was in the group that was with my brother, and I think they had stuff all over their whiteboard sheet. So there is a reason for that. 8 characteristics that you think are important or that you would define as be successful for your program. Mine. Graduated to a big boy cup now. Yeah. Okay, people need more time yet? Are you pretty much done? Okay, maybe a minute or so. Okay, what I'd like you to do now, John, I need you to go to the next slide for me. You go to the next slide for me. Yep. I think whenever you move your stuff. All right. So what I'd like you to do, click, let's see if you, oh, there we go. What I'd like you to do is place a mark on each line where the club falls in that characteristic. You want a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being in the center, meaning we're really not very good at this, or 10 being the outside, like where we do a very good job at this. So this is kind of what it would, you put little hash marks around your circle. You're going to grade yourself on each of the characteristics that you came up with. We'll see. Maybe. And then when you're done with that, I'd like you to connect the dots or connect your marks. YMCA. Yeah. 1 in the center means you're not very good at it. 10 at the outside means we do this very well. Okay, my guess as you kind of connect the marks is that you're going to have some very interesting polygonal shaped something. And obviously, the more you want to be at the outside of the circle, the better off your wheel of success is. Now, I want to tell you, there's a couple interesting ways you can use this exercise. I was called to come in and work with a club in the East Coast outside of Washington, D.C. that had 9 full-time coaches on their staff. And what I wanted to see was, what do each of the coaching staff think are important? So we came up with 72 different items. Now when you do the math, there are 8 characteristics times 9. That means there were 72 things. Not one person came up with the same item, which is not a good thing and it's not that any of the 72 things were bad, but if I'm the head coach, what I reported back to them was, you need to do this exercise where you lead it and you come up with, here are the 8 characteristics, because you don't want to have your coaching staff be on all kinds of different pages as to what's important for your team. I've also seen clubs where they've done this with their board of directors, because again, it's a really good way to get the board all on the same page. And I've even seen it used with a group of senior athletes. Find out what's important to your older athletes. What are they looking for? What do they think why are they with your program or with your team? So it's kind of an easy thing to do, but you can get a lot of information from it relatively quickly. And it can really help you kind of set some direction, because one of the things that you can do when you're done with this, especially if you're in a board run program, come up with what those 8 characteristics are, and then every year have the board do an evaluation or have the coaching staff do an evaluation on where are we on our circle. So theoretically they're all coming up with the same 8 ones, but then you're measuring what each one of them thinks you're successful on in those different areas. Any questions on that? Looks like we're stuck again. I know, but. All right. So kind of going along with that is BMW is a sponsor of USA Swimming, so I had to show a BMW dashboard. And, you know, again, the whole idea of coming up with this concept of dashboard or key performance indicators, what are things that you can quickly look at to know how you're doing? And that, again, kind of goes back to the 8 characteristics in the wheel of success. What are those things for you? So, you know, is it how fast you're going? You know, what's your retention rate? How many kids do you have in the program? How much money do you have in the bank? I mean, those are all different things that you can use to measure whether you're successful or not. And not that any of them are good or bad, but you just need to decide what's important for you. Now I'm back in control. So, nonprofit, your governance literature basically says that you should have, when we talk about finances, you should have at least 50% of your year's operating budget in reserve. Most team organizations that I know of are lucky to have 1 month in reserve, let alone 6 months to a year. So it's something you should think about. And remember that nonprofit is a tax status. It is not a business plan. It's okay to make money in a nonprofit world. We'll talk about, just for a second, about the 80-10-5-5 and its kind of rule. And basically, it's kind of a takeoff of the 80-20 rule that 20% of the people do 80% of the work on your teams or programs or, you know, in most volunteer organizations. But in nonprofit world, in terms of fundraising, approximately 80% of fundraising comes from individuals, 10% from planned gifts, 5% from foundations, and 5% from corporations. What we see, at least in the swimming world, is all swim clubs focus on is, well, we got to get that big corporate sponsor. That's not where most of corporation or most of nonprofit fundraising takes place. It's in the individuals. So how can you, what you need to decide is how can you tap into that? And especially if your program has been around for a while, one way you may want to do that is start an alumni association. I know when I moved out to Colorado, I went to Purdue University, and again, this was before the days of internet, totally exploding. But it's amazing how 6 months after I moved, I never let Purdue know that I moved out here. I got a phone call, hi, this is Susie Smith from the Purdue Alumni Association. It's time for your annual dues. I'm like, how'd you even know I moved? How'd you get my phone number? You know, so, but I gave them my $35. So, and I continue to do that on an annual basis, and they continue to call when you need the annual fundraising campaign. So that may be something for you to think about as an easy way to maintain contact with people through your program. That it's not going to cost you a lot of money anyway to do that. How many of you are aware of, ever heard of the Entertainment and Gold Sea kind of fundraising booklets? Okay, a good number of you. And basically what it is, it's, my kids went to a charter school in Colorado Springs, and one of the things that they do, they were the largest Gold Sea and entertainment book sellers in Colorado Springs for a long time. And the first day of school, they'd come home with this chart that they would pull out. Dad, you would not believe the cool stuff they have on here. And for only selling 35 entertainment books, and I'm thinking, thank God I'm on the road all this fall and I'm not sitting out in front of Walmart and King Super with my wife was. So for only 35 entertainment books, we can get this very cool black and white TV that runs on batteries. This is the actual thing because we're pack rats at our house. I found this thing in the basement literally a year ago. My kids are now out of college. So we still have the thing. I don't know that he ever used it, but by God, he sold 35 entertainment books. So think about what can you do if you're going to do a fundraiser. Learn from Entertainment and Gold Sea books, and for swimming, give team swag back to the people. So can you give new team sweats? Can you do stuff that kids would want to get and use that as part of your fundraising budget? And then finally, when we talk about this, the days of the corporate sponsor just giving you money out of the goodness of their heart is over. You need to think about what can you do to help your sponsor sell more product. That's what they want. And basically what you need to decide is how much are you willing to sell your soul? And I kind of joke about that, but realistically, as an example, Mutual of Omaha is a corporate sponsor of USA Swimming, and the local Mutual of Omaha dealer or insurance agent would like nothing better than to get a hold of the roster of my swim team to send information to all my parents about insurance. So that's what you need to think about is if you want a corporate sponsor, what can you do to help them sell more product? Because the days just generally of the, hey, we'll just give you $1,000 because you're great people are over. One of the things that we keep hearing is that there's a real issue with how do you get more volunteers in your organization? If you turn to page 25 in the book, there's a bunch of different ideas in there about how do you engage volunteers and how do you recognize volunteers. And a lot of it is on the recognition side because you need to make sure that you thank them somehow. So you may want to take a look through that and see if anything kind of hits you that you could employ on your team. All right. Next one is legal duties and responsibilities, and that there are, if you turn to page 20, there are some actual legal responsibilities that if you own a corporation, you're a coach-owned program, or that you're on a board of directors, or you have a board of directors, there are some legal duties that you have to have. So the first one is the courts have determined that's duty of care, and that you must be have care in all dealings of the organization. You're going to keep the organization's interest at heart, and this is carried out by showing up, preparing in advance, and reviewing finances. Duty of loyalty requires that you have the best interest of the organization and that you will have no conflict of interest within the organization. So this comes out by disclosure, written conflict of interest policies, and also confidentiality statements. And the final one is duty of obedience, and that you have obedience to the organization's mission, that you'll go follow along with the law of the land, and it's carried out by, if you're a nonprofit, you have to file an IRS Form 990, and the IRS is cracking down on that. So if you don't file a 990 3 years in a row, the IRS can revoke your nonprofit tax status. So that's something you don't want to let slide. That you make decisions and operate within the bylaws of the organization, and that you uphold those bylaws and policies. So let's see, John, if I can go to the next one here. Yep. All right, go ahead and hit it again. Nope. Go hit this. Yep. Hit it once more. All right, that's fine. Oops, go back, sorry. Just hit it once. There we go. So this is kind of the communication era that we're living in these days. So how does your club most frequently handle communication with your membership? How many of you do it in large group meetings? How many do via website? Okay. How many do it kind of by blast emails? Okay. Written newsletters. Anyone still do a written newsletter? Okay. Or social media? Okay. So one of the things that some information we got is that the most effective to least effective communication in two-way is one-on-one communication. So if John and I are having a conversation back and forth, that's the most effective way to do it. The least effective way is email, and yet that's the way that a lot of us communicate most often. Again, a lot of times you're trying to get information out, but just remember that's the least effective way to do it. So if you have something really important that you need to get out, call a meeting about it. In terms of one-way communication, website is the least effective, and yet that's all the time, a lot of times the way that we say, well, let's just put it up on the website. And I know for USA Swimming, we were talking about this on our way up here, our website's a mess. I can never find anything on it. So, you know, it's just kind of one of those things. Don't assume that because you've put it on your website that people are actually reading it. And what we have seen over the last, you know, especially the last 7 or 8 years with the kind of the advent of social media is now you are the media. You should not be relying on traditional forms of media to get your word out there. You want to encourage people on your own team, whether it's athletes or whether it's parents, to be kind of spreading the good word about your program. And that's one of the great things about Facebook and Twitter. It can also be one of the bad things about Facebook and Twitter. One of the things that I will say that's kind of interesting that we found in swimming, there is one company that has probably 2/3 of all USA Swimming clubs that runs they are the backbone for their website. One of the things that they told us is that 80% of people that are coming to swim clubs' websites are not associated with that team. I found that to be a staggering number. And even if I was going to argue with them and say it's 50%, that's still a huge number. And what that basically is saying is that people are coming to a swim team's website in particular that I can speak to find out information about the program. So what does your front page of your website say about you? Does it show that you're kind of a fun and inviting program? Or does it chock full of just, here's the next practice schedule, here's our upcoming tournament, sign up for this, sign up for that? Or does it say anything at all about who you are as a program? So something to really think about look at your kind of website from fresh eyes, and that if I was trying to find out information about our program, what does it say about us on the front cover of it? Now, for those of you that are old enough, you will know these are elevator buttons. They're not the kind of touch ones that we now have, or some elevators now where you even hit the button outside of the elevator, which always freaks people out. And basically what this is referring to and want you to think about for your program is, what's your elevator pitch? You got 1 minute to pitch me on what is your program about. And you want to have your entire staff especially be able to give a 1-minute spiel about the program, and you don't want to, you want to put it in your own words, but you don't want to have somebody going kind of way off the reservation about saying something that the program's really not about. So maybe something you may want to train your staff about, or if you have a board of directors, spend some time talking about what are the key points that if I had to pitch you on my program and you got 1 minute to do it, what would those key points be? All right, we're going to move into a few final things, just some things that we found that were kind of interesting when it relates to swimming. This is kind of, and I don't think, my guess would be some of these would be very similar in terms of volleyball. Mom is making the decision when it comes in the household and swimming. The child's number 2, and dad is maybe 12 to 20 points behind. So in other words, dads have almost no say in it because it's the mom who's literally driving the bus and making the decision about what sports the kids are involved in. Now this may be different if we were talking about a sport like as football or baseball or basketball, but at least for swimming, it's the mom making the decision. And one other little thing that we found is that our research says in swimming that they will generally drive a 15-minute radius from around their house. I don't know what it is in volleyball, but for swimming, it kind of means that if you're going to do some advertising outside of that 15-minute radius, it doesn't mean you shouldn't be doing it, but you maybe get diminishing returns. You need to adapt to why kids quit. Research shows that, and this is true for most sports, that the number one reason why kids are involved in a sport is because it's fun. When it's no longer fun, they quit. Generally as they get older, they'll make the decision because they want to concentrate on another sport, and that's generally in the 12 to 13, at least for swimming, it's in that 12 to 13 range, kind of as we talked about earlier, where our retention rate for 13 and overs is 90-some%. Because usually by that mind, the kid has made up their mind, what sport they want to play. I love this picture here because it's kind of funny. One of the things that I think is interesting and that some businesses do is that they hire secret shoppers or secret diners to come in and check out your restaurant. So what's the experience like for someone new that says they want to come out and join your team? What do they do? Who do they call? What kind of experience do they have? Who meets them at the door? What do they talk about? I know if I was someone that wanted to be involved with Taekwondo, I'd have no idea how to do that. And so again, think about it from the perspective of someone that doesn't know anything about your sport. What do they talk about? One of the things that we found that really is helpful is it's generally better if a mom or a female talks to another mom and they want to do that, you may need to do some small talk first. What school do your kids go to? Oh, my kids went there. Versus, and I realize I'm really overgeneralizing here. The guy wants to go through the logical things as opposed to making that social engagement and kind of having a conversation first. What kind of clothes do they wear for tryouts if you have tryouts? How long is this going to last? How are you going to educate them on what's the process? So those are the kind of things you need to think about with your welcome entry. Take a step back and think about that. Think mobile. And I realize this is a lot harder to do. It's not kind of an easy fix type thing. But I know at least right now for USA Swimming, more than 50% of the people coming to our website are coming on a mobile device, and that's just getting higher and higher every year. So that's why we're in the process of redoing our website, because it was designed for a PC. It wasn't designed for a mobile. So think about your own website. Can it be seen and easily be used in a mobile environment? Embrace Mamarazzi. This one is kind of funny. the media landscape has totally changed, and one of the things that we tried that I never heard about until about 2 or 3 years ago, when we held our nationals out in Irvine, California. I'm going to go back. Oops, I'm going the wrong way, sorry. That was me doing that. Is that I found out there's things called mommy blogs, and that moms will write things for and then they have hundreds and sometimes thousands of followers that talk about, that they just read this stuff and find out what's going on in the community. So we invited 9 mommy bloggers out to our national championship. We brought Dara Torres in, who's, you know, kind of famous swimmer and now a mom. She took them on a private tour. They got to have their kids sit at the little awards press area. We found out that those 10 moms had a reach of 500,000 people. I mean, it was a staggering number of people that read those mommy blogs by 10 ladies. So think about in your own community, and it's funny, I was even up in Maine sharing this, and the lady up in Maine, Portland, Maine said, oh yeah, I read a mommy blog all the time. There's one up in Portland, Maine. So don't just say, well, we don't have one in our community, because you could, I mean, Portland, Maine has one. It's like 35,000 people. It's not a huge town. So there could very well be some other types of avenues for you to get the word out about your program. And the number one way that people join, at least for swimming, it's word of mouth. It's not necessarily Google. It's a mom asking another mom, hey, what are your kids doing? What activities are they in? What program have you heard is really good? How are you getting them involved? Google is actually number 5 on the list, so it doesn't mean that that's not important, but it's something you may want to think about. Everyone loves a deal. Golf has a great thing about, you know, trying to get kids in. We've even tried some things with Groupon. I know some clubs have done that, you know, where you sign up and you could get X number of sessions for 99 bucks or what, you know, whatever some deal is that you can come up with for your team. And make sure that you're showing your team's personality on your website and social media. Show kids having fun. It's not just all work and hard, you know, hard play. It's the kids are having a great time doing it. All right, got 1 or 2 more and then we're finished. This is something I know in swimming it's the case, and my guess in most youth sports it's the case. Too often we get tied up in what's the team next to me doing. And I think you need to reframe the question is, what do we need to do to be known as the best youth activity in our town? Because the realism is, I was reading some stats just yesterday that 60-some% of kids are not involved in play 3 times a week, or in some kind of vigorous activity 3 times a week. Those are the kids that we all should be going after. And so, you know, encourage multi-sport participation, get kids involved in activities, and stop worrying in my mind about what the next team is doing, but what can we do to get the kids that are couch potatoes off the couch and into our program? What can we offer them to do something a little bit different? And one final resource that we have that I will give to you is that a number of years ago, our group was charged with coming up with what does a good club do? And our National Club Development Committee said, well, we know one when we see it, but are there some characteristics that kind of happen as a result of that good clubs consistently do? So we came up with what we call our club recognition program. And basically we started with a laundry list, and there was like over, I think, 400 or 450 different items. And then we kind of pared it down, and it came out to 4 major areas: business and organizational planning, swim parent volunteer development, coach development, and then athlete development. And then we further subdivided into 4 levels. And it's a voluntary program that a club can participate in. And basically, when you go to our website, and you click, there's this tab here called Member Resources. You click in this area under swim clubs called Recognition Programs. Then this will pop up, and you click on Club Recognition. And if you scroll down farther in the page, there are documents that you can download that give you all of the items that we've come up with in each one of those areas. So again, I think that a lot of the business side of things and the parent and volunteer development side of things you could probably use in your own club. The other thing that we did do in the coaches one that's kind of interesting is we came up with a formula in there to encourage clubs to spend money on coach education and coach development. So there's even an idea in there that you may want to think about as a percentage of your total budget, how much money, at least, you know, we did it for swimming, but just some different ideas that you can use there. And a lot of the information that we have came from an organization called BoardSource. One additional resource that we provide to our clubs is BoardSource offers an organizational membership. So anyone that's a member of a USA Swimming Club can sign up for a free BoardSource membership. So it's normally runs $100 a year, but that's something that we do as an organization for all of our clubs. And if you're not familiar with BoardSource, they're definitely worth checking out. They're kind of the leaders in the nonprofit world.